Hi everyone, welcome back. So this is the part 2 of our previous video. Previous video was part 1 where we did the basic API implementation. Now in this video we are going to build the front end part. In the last video we were able to build the simple APIs. So here we were doing simple APIs like API, auth, login and register we have created. Okay, these are the two APIs which is being handled by the Next.js routes, and they were reading and writing the data in the using Prisma to the SQLite. So this is what we have done. Now the next thing is doing a logout and creating the components using these React hook forms and doing the validations and submitting the data, and then managing the sessions at the client end side. Because from the login we are sending the cookies, and that cookies is handled at the client end side. So if I show you how we were doing it. So this was our login API, right? We were able to get these cookies inside this header. You can see these are the cookies we were receiving. Now it's all about building the components and doing the integration. So let's get started with that. In this video, we are using all these tools: Next.js, React, Prisma, and SQLite, and all these things are being done in the monorepo. You can check the last video; it has everything. Now we are just continuing on top of that. So we need to build the logout because we already have a login logout, and we will be building the login, register, and the profile routes. Okay, profile pages. And inside a logout, what we are going to do is simply, what will happen when you do the logout? Our cookies will set to the max is -1, and cookies values will be become empty. A simple route. There is no logic, no rocket science. A simple route. Now, so this is our simple API auth logout that will just set the cookies to empty with max is -1. This was our register route which we have created. This was our login, and we have tested end to end all these things. Now we are going to focus on how we are going to use the hooks forms, React hook forms library, and how we are going to manage a simple tiny store which manages all the activity happening on this. Okay, so let's get started. How we are going to do is we are going to build all these components. API we have done. Now this login form we are going to build, register form we are going to build with all the validations using React hook forms. So here inside this profile, we are going to create some other components like login form.tsx. Similarly, there is a register form. We have here register form and the login form. Okay, now this is login form, register form, and here we have a component. So inside a components, we are going to create a simple header. I mean, it's all about demo, so we will not be worried about our the styling and all those things. So inside header component, so here we can just create a simple header component, const header. I will try to zoom the code a little bit. So this is visible. So we are going to create a simple header component for the Next.js app. I have already shown you the demo app how it looks like. So we are just going to follow the same header and then simple login form, sign up form, and a profile. So there are 3 or 4 pages we have. Okay, now we also going to use store, and I'm trying a simple library for that. So let's say the header is simple. What do we have inside header is just a simple navbar, and here we are providing a simple login logout buttons. So we also have a logout action that we are going to add here, and it is going to return a simple JSX, right? So inside this we can have simply, and inside this we are going to create a header layout. Okay, so it's a simple header. Class name is bg white, height is 20. We are already using Tailwind, so that can help us in building this simple navbar. So there is a new tag, class name, height full. Okay, and then it is a flex container, justify between, because all the links will be, and it is going to use container. Item center, items center. Okay, and inside this is like your header, and then I mean you can just put some branding if you want, and then here after the nav tag, inside the nav tag there is a first div is the branding. So here we can just use the class name brand up, and after this we have another tag ULLI, and which contains all the links. So here I do have a new class name which is flex items center, and the gap is 4 between each and every flex items. And then there is a li tag. Okay, and li tag means all the links we have. I think I don't need so many classes. This is autocomplete text. Okay, so this is ULLI, and inside li I will have a link because we use a link directive in next link. So this inside specify href. This is how we create a links / that is for home, and class name. What is happening with this? Okay, something wrong with this. Inside class name I will just specify what is the text A 50 or whatever you wanted to put, and we will also try to see how we can customize this tailwind behavior. You can actually customize themes, lots of things you can do. So this is just like a home screen, and then we also need to know on the header, does the user session exists, right? For now I will just add a register and the login, but what we are going to do is we will also try to know if user session exists, then only we will try to show links. Okay, I'll just format this document because we need to show the login and register only when user session doesn't exist. So we are going to play with a little bit on the store, and here there is another link which is all about profile and logout. So these things we need to show when user is not logged in, and there are two other links which we need to show if user is there. Inside li we can just show the profile. That is a simple header which you see for the demo, and then there is a li. We don't need a link. It can be simple logout, class name, cursor pointer, and when you do on click, what we will do is we will do header logout. Okay, and then I will just say, okay, this is a logout action, and we already have defined a logout here, and then we can just do export default logout. So we export default header component. Now we need to work on the store also, because store is important. That will tell us, okay, that user session exists or not, right? Here inside in this logout we are going to have a simple API that is going to log out the user by calling a logout, because we already have a logout handler. Here you can see we have defined this logout API which is resetting the cookies. So we need to have a mechanism to trigger that. Okay, so and we also need to know how we can capture the user data. Okay, so it's all client side, how we can create providers and all to populate the user data in the client side objects, client side components, and all these things are happening at use client. So that is important, right? Because this is client only component. Okay, so now let's work on the store and how we can populate the session at the client side. That is really important. So here let's work on our store folder, which is inside app. So here is our store. What I will do is I will just create an index.ts file. This is all client only, because what we are doing inside this store is just writing it, because state management always happen at the client side. So I will just try to see the documentation, how we use this library. So how we are going to import this from, so what we need is we need to call create, get the instance of create, and then first of all let's define the store type of the store. So this is like custom type I have created. So it contains auth user, which is of initially null, and you can define all the setter methods to set this auth user. So loading is currently boolean, and then set auth user. So you will get a user object which can be of type, let's say any, but we will define a user type. So here we are just creating a type. So void then set request loading. When you wanted to show the loading behavior, is loading is of type boolean, and that's also going to return, that's type return is loading. So we are creating a types, and then there is a reset. Reset is a method. Okay, this is the type, and now we are going to create a store. So how we do it? User store equal to create. So if you have already used it, then it's very good. Otherwise you can learn it. It's really very tiny library and really nice. I will say you should use it. It exposes the set method inside a callback set method, and you can play around with this. So what all you have is auth user. So okay, it should return something, right? So how we do it is, so return auth user is initially null, then request loading, which is initially false, and then we have set auth user. This is the method which is going to take user as an input of type any, and then it is going to use this set to update the user inside our state. So this is my current state, and what could be my new state after this? This is my state, and then auth user is user, and then similarly I can define all the other methods, set request loading and all. Set request loading, okay, I think the comma is missing. So it's like a really tiny library. What we did is we are just calling this set method to create the new state, right? It's all like these are the methods it is exposing, and this is the state we need to maintain. So this is the like initial state. When you call these methods from your client only components, you can set the state and we can access that through the store. And you can just do is export default user store. That's it. So this is your store is ready, and how we can use it. Let's talk about how the uses of this in our header component. So inside component we have header, and here I can just use it. So how we do it? Const store equal to use store, that is coming from this library. Okay, use store. Do I need to pass the APIs? So this is a use store coming from store library. So this is wrong. This we already have created a store library from. So this is inside a lib store, user store we have created. Okay, so user store will give us the store, and then we need to find a way how we can manage the session also in the application. Okay, so we are using use store. Now what we are going to do is let's create a use session. So use session is just like another hook that will just be used to fetch the session. So here inside the lib we can create a simple use session dot tsx, and that is like a hook, and that hook we can use in any of the components to fetch the user data. Okay, so it's going to be export default function, because it's a custom hook use session. And what this function will do is it will use the store. So how we can access the store? Using use store from store library. So store library which we have created, and here inside this we can return another function, async function, fetch user, because fetch user we are going to do with the help of API. So it will be try catch. So because here we are going to make an API call, and if user exists, because if session exists, that means it has the cookies, we can make the API call. Here we will do is const user equal to await. Here we need to write an API handler for the client only components. And how it works is here we can make something like API get auth user that we can define inside our API requests. So API request is nothing but a simple, you can say, utility that we can use to make the API call to the Next.js API routes. API request. So all these APIs like sign in, sign up, all these will go through this. Okay, and how we do it is first we will define server endpoint that we can get from process.env. Server endpoint. If it is not available, that means we are going to use HTTP and localhost 3000. Okay, so this is our server API endpoint, and then we can have a sync function handle response. This is just like a generic method we are going to use, and apart from that we are going to make all these functions and export a sync function API register user. Similarly, there will be another methods. So for now, we are talking about profile user, right? How to get the auth user. So for that also we can just create another function API get auth user, get auth user, and that takes token as a string, and it is going to return us the promise of any. For now, we'll just create a type that it should be of return type should be promise of user, and here we are going to create headers. Headers is of type record string, because what is the type of header? Record of type string comma string, key and value is a string here, and here I can say content type. Content type is application JSON. Okay, we are going to hit the API if token is there, because token is an optional argument here. If token you are passing, then we can just set the headers. Authorization, token authorization equal to, here we will just set it as a bearer token. So we got the token, and then we can just use the fetch API. So const response equal to await fetch. Inside fetch API, what do we need? We need to pass a server endpoint, and the server endpoint API. So there is an endpoint we need to write API users me. So this endpoint we haven't created, I guess. So what we need to do is we will just create this endpoint. What this will do is this will just give you the current logged in user. Still the API implementation is not complete, like how we can protect the APIs. API here we also need to create a middleware. So inside API we can create the user folder. Inside user we need to just define the route API user. So here we are going to create routes.ts. So let's finish the remaining part from the API side. Here we can just copy some part of it, because here we are going to define the handler. Body part we can just make the empty. Okay, what happened? Next server app auth user. So this is inside API user routes.ts. Okay, this is the missing piece. Import, and now what we need to do here? So we are going to write a middleware. So how the flow is looks like. I will try to explain it in the simple words. Once you are logged in, right? Once you are logged in, or then what you do is you will go to the middleware. This is the Next.js middleware. It will validate your token, which is coming inside the bearer. This is your token coming, right? And this is your token. So we already have a middleware that will validate it. And once you are logged in, what we just do is we are going to attach request.user equal to the user ID. Or the other way of doing it, it's not a express TypeScript. We can just create a custom header like X API user in the middleware, and we just assign a user ID to it. That will be done by middleware. So if you are hitting anything API user, that means you are trying to access the protected information. In that case, we will just check, okay, you have a valid token coming in the authorization. Then if token is valid, we will just assign X API user with the user ID. And then you can access your protected API routes. It can be done in different possible ways. This is just a one way of doing it. So here what we can do is we can just try to access, okay, what is the user ID? Are we getting that header? That is user ID that we are getting from request.headers, and here we can access that using X user ID. We just need to have a consistent name so we can use it everywhere. Request.headers.get, it should be, so it won't throw any error. Okay, this is our token. If user ID is not there, so everything is happening through the middleware. It's not like, okay, I'm just checking user ID and anybody can populate a user ID. The middleware will populate this user ID, and then only all these things will happen. If that is true, then we will do it. Otherwise, what we will do, we got the user ID, so we are going to access the Prisma. Await Prisma Prisma.user dot find unique, because we are trying to find based on user ID that is already unique. So here we are saying ID is user ID. So it will give you the user object, and here in the response, now I need to just send the response back, status this, and here I can customize the response. Okay, this is the data property which I'm sending back that contains the user object, and password I will set undefined. So this is just a way of returning the user, and once you have the token available at the client side, you can use this call to fetch the currently logged in user. Now we'll go to our lib where we are doing a use session. So inside use session, we are just going to make this call through the API requests. So here inside API requests, we are fetching the information, response. This is the endpoint. Now with the endpoint, we need to pass the other attribute. What is the method? Method is get, and you can also set, we need to set the send the headers also, and then return. What we need to return? Handle response, because we are going to call the handle response with this response object which we just received, and it is going to return us the promise if data, then data.user. I will just try to check what is the type we are getting. So handle response is just another method which we are writing. So handle response is going to check all the properties, everything is coming back or not. So we will see what is the response we are getting. So if you look into the API, what do you see here in the response object? There is a object contains the data that contains the user object, right? So in the response.data.data, just think about it, because you need to consider the structure. Your response object contains this thing. Inside that you have a status and data. So response.data.data. This is how you will get the data. So we can just create these interface. I can just try to create these types. So it's good that we should have a TypeScript types.ts, which contains, okay, this is the user any, okay, user response API requests. And if we see what we are doing with the API request, this handle response will take a response object which is of type response, response, and it is going to return me the promise of type any. We can just do some generics. Like now we have a const because it's a generic message, right? We need to just see how to stringify, how to parse this message, because it's a fetch call, right? So const content type we are getting is response dot headers dot get content type. I mean, just for safety we can just do this, otherwise content type is application JSON. These are the REST APIs we are writing. If it is not there, it's a string empty. Const are we getting is simple JSON object is JSON. So content type dot include content type dot includes, and here I'm saying is it application JSON? It's like just a handler which we have to write. If data is there, but how we need to fetch it. If it is a JSON object, then we need to do await response dot JSON again. This is how the fetch works, right? You need to do await response dot JSON to get the data. Otherwise, if let's say if it is a text response, then how you do it? Await response dot text. I mean, we generally don't do it, but this is how it really works based on the content type. Now here you can just check if response dot okay, because first you get the response which tells you what is the status code, and if JSON is there and data dot errors not equal to null, then we can simply throw new error, and here we can just do a JSON dot stringify data dot errors. Okay, simple. If nothing happens, then it's obviously if the content type is not JSON but still there is an error, we will do it, and then finally we can return the data. Okay, so it's like handle response will be called by this, which is going to return us the data, and then we have data inside data dot user. Data dot user. So get API auth user we are going to call from this session. Get API auth user. Is it get API auth user? So we just called it. So what this thing will do is it is going to give us the data. This is the user object, actual user object. What we can do now is we can just set this inside a store.set auth user, and we already got the user object, so we will just set it. If there is an error, then store.reset. That means token has expired or something. We need to just clear out the user object which is already there. Okay, and this is then we can just call use effect API hook to trigger this fetch user API call. I mean, who will call this fetch user in this custom hook? We need to find a way to do it, right? So if store dot auth user is not there, then we need to make this call, because user doesn't exist there, and we can just pass the dependencies empty, so it's a like one-time call. And if it is there, then we just call store dot auth user. So it's like a custom hook we have created, and what this custom hook is checking, if store doesn't contain auth user, call this fetch user which is using this async API call, to fetch the data, put the data inside our store, so that our component can use it. And what this is returning? This is returning currently logged in user. So inside header, so we have our header component, right? Inside header, we will go inside our header component header.tsx. Here we can use this logic. How we are doing it? If you see our code inside our header component, so inside our header component, we can access this data using const user equal to use session, which we have created. That's it. Now, if user is there, right? If user is there, then do this. Otherwise, if user is there, then just show the profile and log out. Otherwise, do something else. And then here, if you are trying to log out, and we will do something else. We can define this API request. Await. How we do it? So whenever you are doing any API call, first of all, we can just do this store dot set request loading equal to true in any API call from the component, clients only component, and then API logout user. This is the method we are going to write. And then if everything is good, we can just do the finally. And then what finally does is we can just say just store dot reset, because you did a logout. We need to reset the store and then router. So here we also going to use the router. So I do have access to the router, which is a next router. We can import this next router, and we can do is router dot push or router dot push login. Because you did a logout, I need to send you to the login screen. Simple. / login. And here, if there is a catch, still we need to reset. I mean, we don't need to reset. We don't need to do anything. If you want, you can just log it. Is the error console.log error? I mean, I'm not able to log out, and await API logout. So this should be a sync function. Async logout. Await API logout user. Do we have this method, or will we have to create it? API logout user inside API request. So here we will define this export async function logout user, API logout user. And what will happen with the API logout user? We are going to make the API call, same API call which we are doing here. And because it's all about sending we already have a token. Okay, so we just need to make this API call, API logout user. So here API auth logout. API auth logout method is get, and headers you can send content type. Content type is application JSON. Okay, and this is how you can just we don't need to deal with anything, because it's a simple logout which we are doing. So now it is complete, the header component. Okay, now what we need to do, we just need to write a login logout form and need to test this end to end. Before that, we also need to write this middleware at the server side. So this is our component lib. Inside app, we are going to create this middleware.ts. Inside source, I can just create this, because the thing is it should not be empty, otherwise Next.js will complain about it. Okay, so we'll write the method like what this is a simple middleware. So here it should look like this: export async function middleware, and it will take some params of some type. So what it happens is it takes a request of next request, and then inside this you will be doing some stuff, right? Like when to forward the request and when to just do some validations on the request object. If everything is good, then only we will allow user to move forward. So it's like same as express middleware we used to write. It's like a simple same thing we have to handle here, like check the cookies contains the token, then if token is there, then validate the token using jwt.verify. If token is correct, then only allow user to just set the header and just redirect. Set the header and then allow user to forward. Otherwise, what we need to do is we need to just throw the error. If something is not right, we can just return the response with the status code from here only. Okay, so that we will do in that we can complete. So this is the middleware. Apart from that, we just need to build these components: login, profile, logout, register. Okay, so let's proceed further. Before that, I will just do a quick overview, like what all we have built. We already have all these different routes, which is login, register, and logout. Okay, so what we are going to do now is from here, this is the client only component. From here, we are going to send a requests. So Next.js provides two different kind of components: server components. So these all are the server API routes, right? These are server API routes, and then there are some pages also, or pages or routes, which is like, okay, the login route, which is going to render us the page login, register, and then profile, and then there is a home page like /default. All these are server side components which are going to render these small React components. Okay, so when you are going to trigger a request, you will be either loading the / profile, login, and register. Okay, so when the request goes at the Next.js side, there is also a middleware which we are going to register. Okay, what is the use of this middleware is middleware will always take care of, okay, what you are sending in the request. Let's say what it is going to take care is whenever you are going to send a request from the client only component, client side components. Okay, I'm doing a login, register, and profile. Then this middleware will validate. Let's say you are fetching the profile. This is the protected route. So middleware will validate that you are passing the token in the authorization header or not. If yes, then it will just append the XAPI user onto the request object and will send those requests to the API routes. So there are all these different API routes. There is another API routes which we have API, which is user. I think that's it. API user and me, something like that. So I think it's just API user. So these are different API routes. These are all API routes, and these are the pages routes. These are going to render the server side pages. And when you are sending the request, it will always get processed through the middleware. And in the client side, so all this is server side. If you just think about what we are doing server side, all of these is server side. Even just integrating with the Prisma and talking, all this is server side. The client side is only these sub components, because what happens is these are my client components. So when you hit a / login, this login is going to render another client component, which is a login form. Login form component, and it is going to use a simple store, a state management. So we can manage only a store or the state inside only client only component. So it contains the store which shows, okay, the API call is being made, this is my auth data and all. But for fetching the auth data also, you are making a call from these client only components. So there is always if I talk about the client side, what do we have? All this is here. So here we have a huge session hook. I'll just try to write it. So here we have a huge session hook that is just making a call. If you have token, then that is making a call to this API interface, and it is going to return as the user, and we will have the data available inside this store, the auth data. Once you have auth data, you can just show that auth data on the profile page, and on the front end side you can just show and hide things. That's the only thing, because client side state doesn't matter much here, because this application is totally server side rendered. So when you hit a / login, all the data will be, all the checks will be happening in the middleware, that are you logged in, do you have a session, if session exists, through the middleware will just forward you to the profile page. If you are at the profile page and you hit reload, then all the data is going to be fetched from the server side. So client side state is only just putting this auth profile data, user profile data in the simple store that can be just used to show and hide things on the front end side. So here we have lots of things like login form, then there is a register form, and then there is a profile page component. So there is a profile page, right? For all these components, we are going to access the data from the store. I mean, we need to just check, okay, does the session exist and what are the values in this session? And this store will be populated using use session hook, and use session hook is going to make a call to the API on every page route handler. It is going to fetch the data from this API call, which here you are sending a token, and when you send a token, I can just fetch my profile data. Okay, this is pretty much the overall structure of our simple application. Let's proceed further. We will build a login form, sign up form, and the profile page, and this middleware. These are the four remaining pieces for the overall application. So let's look at our components. So this is the API. Now we can just check our root layout and the root page, which is going to be published on the forward slash. So this is our page.tsx. Here we have some section. Okay, a basic HTML snippet we can add, last name, and we can add some body background like easy blue 600. I mean, this is like the main page, main height screen, and padding top 20. And inside this section, this is like a flex column, justify center, and here we can just show a message. Message is nothing but let's add some classes for this. Class name text 3xl. This is going to be a large text. Okay, text is center, so text center. And font, what font you wanted to use? Font semi bold, and I'm just going to show a simple welcome message. Welcome to demo app, or whatever the message you wanted to show. Okay, this is your simple home page. Here we also going to render the header, because header will always be there. So we have created a header component. We can render it here. Header component, yes, this is the header component which I want. So this is our top header component, and this is the top home page, and this is the layout. We inside a layout we are rendering all the children's. Okay, so this is our root layout, and inside this root layout, this is our top page, and inside global CSS we are importing all the Tailwind utilities. This is the Tailwind classes we have. Now we will start adding things inside a login, profile, and register. First of all, profile. So what do we need inside our profile page? First of all, this is a server side page. Server side page means we are not going to use client and all, because it's all top page. So export, first let's define this, what it is going to do. Export default async function file page. And inside profile page, what we are going to do is we are going to first check, okay, user logged in or not. Otherwise it's all going to return the profile information. And here we can render the header component, top header component, which we have created earlier. And inside this we can have a section, and it will have some classes. Class name, let's say the bz blue 600. We have background blue, I mean edge screen. So this is min edge screen padding top 20. Okay, and inside this section we can have a div. Let me just see what we need to put here, because this is a profile page, right? So I can just show a simple div section, same as the home page, and I can just show the basic profile information, right? So inside these p tags, first of all, let's call it as a profile page, and inside this I will start showing, okay, what all profile information I have about the user. So div class name, margin top 8, and here inside the p tags, so we have multiple p tags, and we can have all the classes, class name, padding top or margin bottom 3, all these information, like what is the id. Here we need to fetch the user, so where the user will come from, that is important. It's a server side component, we cannot pick the data from the Redux store. Okay, so how we are going to get, first of all, we are going to get cookies store cookie data from cookies. So this is all server side. So we are going to get cookies from next headers. Okay, this is how we can get the cookies. So once you get the cookies, you can get the token from the cookies. So cookies store dot get token. So this is how you can access the cookies in the server side components. And then I can just do const user, and you already know, if I have the cookies, how can I get the data? API get auth user, and I can just get token dot value. That's it. So you got the user object. Once you have the user object, what all you can do, you can just show the information about the user.id. And you know, this is a server side component, so it doesn't have access to the store. We need to fetch the user data on the fly, like on the page load. We will be making API call. If user session exists, it will allow us to fetch the data. And also we will be checking the middleware thing. Okay, first of all, middleware will allow you to access the profile page only if your session exists. User.role and all the basic. This is our profile route, and apart from that you have a loading. So loading can be just a spinner component. We can create a simple spinner component. Inside our component there is a spinner. So here we will just create these components, and then we will import these components in our loading components. So here, how do we do this? On spinner, this is React. How do we do the typings? React.fc, and this is like a simple component. Okay, this is like props which it is passing, and then it is returning some JSX. Okay, and then once you are done with this spinner, export default spinner component. This is how we create a functional component. I'm just adding these React FC types, and we can also create the props which we have to pass to this component. Spinner props. These are all our spinner props I'm going to pass, like the width. That is because width is optional, that is of type string. So all these different properties I'm going to pass to the spinner component, and then here this component is taking spinner props, right? This is how we specify spinner props, and here you can just override it. If you're not passing, then width will be 1.25 rem, and all the other options, width and height, all the default options. And then you can have some kind of SVG, and then you can dynamically pass some of these colors to that. Okay, so that I'm doing, I already have that SVG. I will just put that in the return statement. So this is SVG will do that, and here we are using simple tailwind merge. which allows us to merge the styles. Okay, so this is my spinner component. This spinner component, I can just import them everywhere. So how would I create a default component which I can copy everywhere? Export default function loading. Right, same component I will copy on all the places where we have this kind of a loading state. Division class name. Okay, what do we need to put? Because it is also going to be a full screen loading. Message flags, item center, justify center, background slate 100. Okay, inside that we can have another div which contains the another class names. Okay, class name height 20, like what is the actual height and width of the spinner which we are going to allow, and it's rounded md, shadow md, flex item center, and what is the background white. Okay, simple all these classes, and then inside that I'm going to hit spinner. Spinner we already created spinner component, and here I can just specify what is my height, what is my width, because this is a reusable component we have created which I can use anywhere. Okay, and now this loading component I can just use everywhere. Loading, login, profile, and register, loading. And then there is an error component. Error component is simple, which we can use everywhere the same. These all are the client only components. So there is a loading, error component, and page components. So page component is something which is being fetched from the server side, right? All are server components like profile. Here we are going to render the register and login form also. And then what they are going to import, right? So the register component will import the register form. Register form will be use client, that will use a use client here because it's all happening at the client side. Register form and the login form. Okay, but this is a server component, page.tsx, page.tsx, and this page.tsx. So let's write a simple login form. We are going to use React hook forms, and then we'll just copy the same implementation to the login to the register form. Okay, page.tsx. So first of all, this is our page.tsx. It's a server side component. Go to the login page.tsx. So it's export default async function, and this is the login page. Okay, inside this we are going to simply return some JSX, and now because every component has the same layout, so the topmost component will be our header component, and after that you will just define okay what you want to show in the login, like simple demo or something like that. So I will just copy and paste that stuff. I already have it. So that is a simple section because it's the same as the home profile page. So simple, and we are just going to create a login form component. So it's a export default. So it's a login form component we are creating. Export default function login form, right? And then there is a the register form component, and we are importing it in the same way. Login, here this is the login form we can import. So this is how our login form and the register pages looks like. Here also we can do the same thing. Here it will be register form instead of this, and I will import register form. Okay, simple. Register, you can just sign up. It's not accepting export default register form. And here register form. Okay, it should be returning some basics, then only it will allow us. Okay, now it's good. So this is register form, this is login form. Inside login form also do something like this, return some empty JSX, and it will allow you to import. Okay, now we are going to work on login form and the register form. Okay, so now let's work on this login form. Here we are going to use React hook forms. That is the library to validate, just to do some simple validations and make form really powerful. We can just try to see this thing, React hook forms, and I have used it a lot. I'll just try to show the demo like how it really works. We can just use it simply like this. On submit, you are going to get I will try to find the nice implementation. Okay, this will work. So there is a use form hook, and this is how you can capture the data from each and every input text field. And when you submit it, you will get the data. So use form, React form hook. So on submit, so all these methods you are getting from register, handle, submit, you are getting from the form component. So let's try to use some of those concepts. So this is the login form component. Here we can get the store first of all, because this is the client only component. So we can access the store here. Use store coming from our store component, store library, and we are going to use router also here, because once user is logged in successfully, we are going to redirect user to the profile page. Okay, and then here, because we are going to use React hook forms, we can get all the methods for the form fields like handle, submit. All these are going to come from methods, and all these methods will be coming from our use form method, const method, and this is use form. Okay, it's not coming. Don't we have React hook forms? So use form is coming from React hook form. Okay, let's try to add it. npm add React hook forms. I thought it's already there. So what we will do is use form, and okay, is it coming? Use form. No, I need to restart the app. It's better that I will do it later. So inside this, we need to specify the object. Okay, like what is my resolver? So if you want to specify some validation criteria, then we can use Jod. Jod is actually a library to validate the schema, and we already have a login user schema. If you remember, we were using that. So here I will be using Jod resolver, and I will specify my schema, which I think we already have created this user schema, right? And this use form. Okay, I need to, because this is a new library I have created, so either I need to restart this TypeScript stuff, but sometimes it doesn't work. So this use form is actually coming from React hook forms. So let's see if it works. Okay, and this Jod resolver is coming from hook form Jod resolver. Okay, now I think it is giving us something method. Okay, and then what all we are going to get from the method? Reset, handle, submit, and form state. All these are predefined. I'm not doing any rocket science, like you have already worked on this. Is submit successful? All these things are coming from this use form hook. Here I'm just specifying my validation criteria using passing the same login user schema which we were using, and here I can use effect hook. It's all pure React component because it's a client only component, so I can use the hooks, I can use the Redux, all the state management library. If is submit successful is false, is if it is true, then just do the reset form, right? Form submission is successful. We can reset our form. That is being done using use effect. And here we can just mark this is submit successful. Okay, and store also we need to reset. That we can do with the help of this store initially when you're loading the component. Okay, and here inside this, what do we have is we have simple form component which we need to build. Okay, so let's build the simple form component. Here first of all, what we need to do, we need to use form provider. Yes, simple form provider, and we will pass the methods. Okay, inside the form provider, what all we need to pass? Like on submit method. So inside form provider, we can just use this form. Okay, let me clean this. It won't work like this. On the on submit. So what will happen is we are going to handle form submit, and we are going to write our own method on submit handler. And on submit handler, this is the method we are going to define. Okay. On submit handler, when you are submitting the form with some value, I'm going to handle it something like this, like I'm going to call this function login user function and just pass values. Okay, and these values will be of some type, login user input type, which we already have defined a type, login user input. We were using this type earlier. I'll just try to import this. So const on submit handler, this is of type submit handler of type login user input, and then this function I'm going to define. This function will be just handling all these things. So async function login user input, login user function, and here you will access all the values. Values is type of login user input, and this is like a async function you have created, and you already have access to the store. So when you are submitting the form, set request loading true, I mean this is just like a toggling and all those things you are doing, and you will put all these things inside a try catch. Here you are submitting the form, make the get call and pass these values. Okay, so this is my own submit handler. What is wrong with this? So here I'm submitting this handle on submit handler, email and the password. Okay, submit handler email password is not assignable to parameter type, field values missing the following property, email password, login user input has both the values. This is email and the password. Okay, I will just check what is this particular error is talking about. So this is a simple form, right? Inside this form, let's add some classes and then we will write this form. So this is our class name. I can just make the background gray or something. I will just fix these colors. I'm just trying to make these, I need to make these all nices. Padding 8, space vertical Y, vertical space space 5, padding 8. Okay, and then inside this I'm going to create a form input component, custom form input component that will take care of all these things of validating and all these things. Email, this name is email and type is email. So let's consider that we are creating a custom form component which takes these three props, right? Form input, label, name and type. So let's say we have email and the password. There are two form fields we have. Label is password, name is password, and type is password. Simple login form input we are going to create. Okay, and then there is a submit button, right? Simply we are going to create a login button that will also take care of the loading, showing the spinner whenever the loading is happening. So there is a loading we are going to pass as a prop. Store dot is request loading true or false, and here I can just show text color, so it's like a reusable component I'm going to add. So text color is a class text view 600. Okay, this is a login button component. Rest you can just say, okay, if you are not logged in, do the sign up and all. So we are going to create this form input component and the login button component. So I want to have all these three custom components: form input component and the login button component. So let's go to the components, and there I can see form input component. So form input component is a simple reusable component I wanted to build. This is, let's say, what are the props which we are going to pass in this form input component. Form input props, it's like a TypeScript React TypeScript component we are going to create. So label is required. This is like a props we are creating. String name is required, and then type is optional. If you're not passing type, then I will consider the type as a text. So const form input, and once this is done, we will also check how this looks like. Okay, and I will just update some tailwind classes so it can look something nicer. Form input component input props. Okay, and this is what I'm passing, and this is the arrow function, and this is what component is returning. Okay, this is our form input component. So here I will have a label being passed, and the name will be passed, and the type. If you're not passing the type, then I will be considering the type as a default. Okay, and here I will just get all these things from form context. So we are using React hook forms, register, form state. All these things will be coming from use form context. You can see it is giving us the form state and errors, and this is how we are going to register each and every form field. So it's going to be little simple implementation. Div class name, if you have any classes to add, and here we will add input text field. First of all, label, because we are passing this label, so we'll just create the label tag with and pass all these classes needed for it. Label HTML4, and that is for the name. Here we need to pass for which field we are passing HTML4. Class name is a text. What is the color? Blue 600, and margin bottom 3. Inside this label we'll just pass the label props, and then here we are going to do the input text field. So input type we are getting. If you're not passing type, then it is going to be type text. Placeholder, let's keep it empty, and then class name, we can just put class block, display block, width is full, rounded to XL. Rounded to XL, uppercase appearance none, focus outline, all these things. Focus outline none, and vertical it is 2, and horizontal it is 4. And then how we do the registration? So this is, here we can just spread it and just register this particular field, register name. This is our simple input text field. Okay, and if there is an errors, because there can be errors, right? If there is a validation errors, if error contains this particular name and then we need to show this particular messages, span class name and how you will show error dot name dot message as string. Okay, this didn't work. This will be optional. Okay, this worked. And inside class name, we can just show this tailwind class text red 500, text red 500, text is extra small, and padding dot 1, display block. Okay, simple input field component. Okay, to export default. This is the form input component. A simple reusable form input component. So similarly, we have a login loading button also. I will try to build the same loading button component also. I really like it. So what is the type? So loading. So it's loading button props. So what are the props we are passing? Loading true and false. So that is required to let this button component know that do you need to show the button loading or not. Button color string. Okay, I mean these are the what all you can customize on the button. Text color string. And do you have any children? Because it's going to be a react node component. React node. Okay, these are the types. Okay, then you can just create a simple component, export const loading button component of type react functional component react.fc, and it is accepting this loading button props, and there are some defaults. Yes, simple loading button, and here you can specify, okay, what is the text color. If you are not passing it, then I'm just going to override it, text white. Button color, okay, this is button color, and button color I'm going to override bz yellow. bz 400, and if you are passing children, and then if you are passing loading, then I will just consider that as false. Okay, simple button component. Here what you are going to return from it. So this is button type submit, because it's a submit button first of all, right? And here what do we have in the button if it is loading? So first of all, here we are going to just tweak. If it is loading, then you are going to show some spinner behavior, otherwise you are going to show something else inside a span tag. If it is not loading, then you are going to render the children. What happened to this? Okay, I may have missed something. If it is loading, then do this, otherwise do this. Did I miss something? So this is inside button. It's wrong here, and I did paste. So it's a ternary operator. If it is loading, then just use the string. Okay, strange. It was just reporting that we didn't put anything there. So here we can just say there is a spinner I can use. Okay, and inside a spinner I can just pass because it's a default spinner component, and if it is not spinner, then I can render the children component spinner, and you can just span show message. I mean we can customize this a little bit more. I will do it offline. So this is how you can show a simple button component. Okay, then you can just export default button components, specify the customization, but this is how you will do it. You will also customize the classes which are being passed to this button component. Here you can just customize it in your own way. Class name, So let's say justify center. Justify center, and it's going to be flex. Heading vertical 3, rounded. LZ outline none. So some kind of a tailwind classes we can add. So these are all the button components. Now we can add them inside a login form component. I will do this, and then the same we are going to do for the registration. So I'm not going to do the same implementation for it. So this is the loading button. First of all, it's a loading button. So just import that, or I will just see what is the name exactly I put there. So export const, it should be export default. So we can just use export loading button, and I can use this loading button in my login form. Login form loading button. Exit. Okay, why it is complaining? Loading button. Children is missing. Okay, yeah, that is correct. We are not specifying the children. So inside the login loading button, it's like a simple loading form. What do you do is you will just simple pass the props. Loading button white twice. Just put a message login. And why it is complaining again? Okay, there is no form. Form is closed. Now I will just format it. Okay, my simple login form is done, right? Now let's see how it looks like on the UI, and then we will do the sign up form. Okay, so this is our application running. It's a simple login page. This is a simple home page doing nothing much. And here register, we are going to build this page. And this is our login page, right? Let's try to fix some styling for the login, and then we will build our register page. Okay, I tried to decrease the width here, and now let's change the background for this box. This is width full, and I'm just going city dark. Let's say if I just make like 500. Okay, this doesn't look good. I mean, I'm just not putting much effort on the styling things here. So I will just make it is like background white. If I just make background white, then how it is going to look like, let's see that. So here is our login form. I will just make background white 200. Okay, this is still a little bit better than that. And there is a login button now that is totally disappeared. We need to have some, so this is our button, right? So we need to put some styling for our login button, like what is the class we are going to put here. And inside login button we can specify text blue 600. Okay, now let's pass our class text gray. Now this look a little bit better. I just changed the class and the color we are passing. Okay, so what will happen now? So when I just try to see, if you can see, when we are loading the page, on every page request it is making a call to API user me, that is returning 400 because currently we are not logged in. So I will just try to log in, and I think it will just throw, you can see the loading state, and currently we are not handling the error, right? So if the handle response is returning user not found, then we have to handle that first of all, like handle error response, and then we need to redirect that to the same page. Okay, so let's see what is happening when I do the login. Here you can see a simple form, hello@gmail.com. And when I do the login, let's see the network calls. what actually happening. That will help us to debug things. And here I did the login, right? So when you do the login, here I'm getting post and it is getting successful. You can see I'm getting a message successful and I got the response back. And you can also check the headers. Here inside headers, you can see the cookies are set, logged in true, token is this. So we just need to handle this in the right way so that we can just proceed to the profile page, and inside profile page, we can show the user information. So let's check the profile page because we are already logged in and here it is saying not found, some errors. Let's try to debug this. So here you can see what we are doing on the profile page. So this page.tsx, we got the cookies, we got the token, and it is all happening at the server side. API get user auth token, that is making call to this API. API users me, and it is just passing that, and then trying to check if the user exists, and it is doing a handle response. Inside handle response, we are just checking here. I can just try to console.log response and try to see what we are getting. Okay, response. I will just try to log it. Currently, it is just throwing this data error, not found. Handle response line 18. Handle response line 18. It is returning. It is just throwing this particular thing. Let's see if I'm just throwing error. So let's see if there is an error. We can just okay. So let's see what response, what error we are getting. So that is important to understand. Like, is it the API is failing or what? So currently, because I know API will fail, we haven't written the middleware, but it's all about knowing things like what is breaking right now. So here is a response, and I think the response is not being returned because if you look at this particular API, here what we are doing, we are checking if X user ID is there, and that is possible only with the middleware. This request will go to the middleware, then middleware will check this cookies, authorization cookies, and then it will add X user ID in the headers for the same request object before forwarding it to the API routes. So in that case, it should just return you this response message with the status code 401, content type and all. Okay, that's why this is breaking. That is the one possible cause, and that's why you can see this big lines coming on the console. So what we are going to do is, before doing this, we can just try to create a simple method which is going to, so what is happening here is inside a profile page.tsx get API user, and here this handle response, right? Because it's, we know this API will break even after user is logged in. So we need to write a middleware that will deal with all these situations. Okay, so let's create a middleware.ts. So, and registration form is kind of simple as a login. We are not going to create it specifically. Middleware.ts, and inside middleware we are just going to add all sort of things because we cannot keep the middleware empty, otherwise our Next.js will return an error. Okay, so we are going to do is export async function middleware. This is just a simple handler we have, and it is going to access the request object of next request. Okay, now what we are going to do inside this, so let's say we have a token is of type string or undefined, and if, so what do we have is if request dot cookies dot has, if this has contains already the token, then we are good. Then token equal to, what do we have is request dot cookies dot get token dot value, and then we need to just get the bearer token because it's a bearer token, so we need to remove that string from it, right? If that is there, otherwise what we are going to do is request.headers.get authorization. It can be coming inside authorization, or it can be coming inside authorization header. So we will just try to do the substring and get the token. So token will either be coming inside a simple cookies token, or it may be coming as an authorization inside headers. So we are checking both the things. Are you sending the uh, this token inside the headers or inside cookies? And then we will just try to do some checks if you are trying to access the particular login page or something like that. So what we are going to do here, we are just going to do some if else statement, like const response equal to next response dot next. So this we are going to return, but on some conditions. So here we can just do a try catch. So inside error, there can be issue while doing a verify and all, right? So in try if token is there. So what we need to do is, if token is there, then we need to decode, and we need to verify the token, right? So await. So there is already a method verify JWT, and it takes two argument. I mean, it takes just a token, but what it is going to return? It is going to return this subscriber, like the user ID, which we just put inside that. So this is just a type, and it is going to return us this subscriber is a user ID here. Okay, and then what we will do is response dot headers dot set, and what is the header value we are expecting in these endpoints. So I will go to app login profile, wait, inside the users, and I'm expecting X user ID. Okay, so in the middleware I will set X user ID value to something. So here X user ID. So this is how what we are doing is we are trying to set the value to this subscriber is actually user ID, and what we are doing is, if there is authenticated request dot user. So do we have authenticated request? We already got the request object, right? Inside that also user, we can set this value inside authenticated request dot user. I can set this ID as a user ID. Okay, authenticated request is we already have an access to the request object, which is a next request, and inside the request we are setting the user object on top of that. If there is an error, then what we will do is we will just redirect it to the login page that you just passed wrong authentications and all. And inside this error, we can always check what is your URL. So what is your current URL? Request dot next URL dot path name. These are the checks you can perform. Path name dot starts with. If this path starts with API, that means you are trying to access the API, but you are not logged in. So what we will do is we will just return get error response, and we will set a status code 401, and we can say token is invalid. Simple, right? Otherwise we will just redirect to a login page. So simple web authentications, and we will redirect you to the login page. So if you are already if we got authenticated user, so we are still in the try catch. So what else we need to do inside a minute? Let's say we got auth user, that we can get from authenticated user dot user. This is our auth user we have received. I will try to fix this typing. And here, if auth user is null, I mean, sometimes it can happen. If auth user is null, then what we can do is return next response dot redirect. I think there is a method redirect, and that will redirect you to the new URL. Okay, you can specify where you want to redirect. So that is just an argument. some custom argument you can specify by dot. Okay, and if let's say you are logged in, right? You have the valid authentications and token, and still you are trying to access the login page. That is not right, right? So we need to redirect user to the profile page for that. Okay, this is auth user. It should be auth user. So if there is auth user and you are trying to the next URL contains a login, that means you are already logged in. You need to go to the profile page, not to that. And here we can return response. If you are returning response, that means everything is good and we can move forward. So here we most of the time we will be just adding this X API X user ID to the request, and we'll forward this request to the route handler, like API users give me my own profile, something like that. So this is a simple middleware we have created. So to fix this TypeScript, you can create a custom authentication request which contains a user object. So it's like how we define the types for the request.user. So you can extend the next request and do it. Now I think we should be able to do something now. So this is the login. Okay, so this is our simple login route. Okay, now let's see what is happening now. So okay, login is gone and I got the payload preview, and then it is taking me to the profile. There I was just making this API call, I think, because when you go to the profile, I am making API call to the get auth profile, and then it is redirecting me to here, which is again login with error bad auth. So that is something happening with this middleware. We are not able to validate this token. Then only this is possible, right? When you are trying to hit this API user me, it is redirected with the status 401. That means whatever the token you are passing inside header, so there should be a request object, because this call is internally happening. So let's see what is happening here, because this is a server component. When you navigate to the profile, it's all server things which are happening here. So we cannot just intercept what the API call that is returning. But from here we can understand lots of things. We can just try to console things and try to see what is the error. So that is stuck here on data root errors. So let's see if we got the token in the request for the profile component inside the profile page.tsx. So here, first of all, we are passing token, and I'm just going to go to this thing, and here X user ID. Do we have this user ID? I think we are not getting this user ID from the middleware. Console.log user ID. That means whatever the token we are passing, that is not getting processed. So here let's try to see this. If we get the console.log token, let's try to print the token. If it starts with a login, then we'll just return. Otherwise, here we are checking API users, API user logout. Here we are just verifying the token. So I think we need to pass the secret also. Okay, secret is already getting fetched. GWT secret key, gwt.verify, and this should return us the data. Okay, that's the error, right? I'm not returning anything. Return verify. So that should return with the payload, right? I can try to log it or something like that. So verify GWT secret. This is the token and secret. So this will give me the payload using which I have created this token. Now I will just try to log in again. Let's see if we get any success yet. Login profile, bad auth, and try to see what is happening. So here we got the keys, we got the token everywhere. That means token is being passed properly. And here we are doing a verification, right? The verification is happening here. I think I'm not getting this. This is not returning any data. Okay, this typing I can skip. This is creating problem. And here I'm trying to print subscriber value. Okay, so that should be coming as a object. Inside that I'm trying to get the value. So if we just try to see how we are decoding, how we are creating the token, payload sub, okay. So this is what we were using to create a token. So this token again came back, JWT secret key, and we are just doing a verify. So jwt.verify should return me the data. Let me try to see what we are getting in the verify. I'm missing small mistake, it is there, and we'll just try to fix it. It's all debugging. I think it should be returning a promise, then it should be await jwt.verify, but I'm just wanted to validate it once. So it's hello@gmail.com. Okay, so here is email and the password. This is my token. Is it going till there or not? So here we need to use some kind of a debugging skills. So here I was trying to debug this in the middleware. I just put an error block on the verify. And what I did, I got this strange error. And the error is your token is getting expired. So when we are doing a verification, your token is getting expired. That means you cannot do the login. It will always throw 401 token is invalid. And why that is happening, that I'm still trying to decode, because verify JWT, this is where we are verifying and this is where we are signing the token. And here I have even specified expires in 10 hours. So that's not giving any effect, even if I just do expires in, and I think that's a string. So let's say 10 hours. Means whatever the token you are generating, that should have an expiry of 10 hours. And when I try to see this here, the expiry is not that, right? So what it is saying 2014 4, and this is 1044. Okay, yes, it is 10 hours of expiry. You can see June 14, and then this is June 14. I mean, it should be Wednesday. Little strange. Okay, expiry should be from the current hours, right? So we need to fix that logic, how we are setting the expiry for the sign in token. So jwt.sign, here we need to pass the expiry from the current date so that our token should not get expired. So we need to fix this particular logic of setting up the expiry for the token, and it should start working as expected. Okay, so after debugging a little bit deeper, I mean, my token is valid. I saw that, you can see I put the expiry 152 and 52. So there is a 1 hours of expiry. Then when I try to see what is there, because this is the custom exception I'm throwing, that is the problem. We should not use the custom messages if we don't know the impact. So this error is of type any. And what is this error? This error is something wrong. The as runtime does not support Node.js crypto module. Okay. So because we are just using JWT verify, and Next.js somehow doesn't support the underlying library. That's what it is reporting, right? So if I just try to see things now, we'll do the fix for it. So here you can see the same error, right? Does not support Node.js crypto module. So now let's fix that, and then we will just validate all the implementation. Okay, so what is the final fix? I cannot use JSON web token with the Next.js. So that's a good news. I need to change the library. So what I will be doing, I will be using this Josh. I will just check the implementation, how it really works. It's all about creating the token and verifying the token. Okay, it's also work in the similar way. So what we will do is we will just change this token library. Inside the token, we are now going to use, so here it is the library, right? We are creating the token and the decoding the token. So here we are going to use Josh library to create a signed token and verify it. Okay, so we have fixed the validation error, that token expiry error, by introducing another library. Now we will just try to see this end to end. We have updated our middleware, right? And I just put the console logging. It's all about troubleshooting, because sometimes you end up using a wrong library which doesn't support. Okay, now this is our simple middleware, which is validating all those things. And finally, if auth user is there, then it will help you, it will allow you to process this API request of fetching the user. Here we are getting X user ID and then checking and just logging the user and returning the response. Okay, so now let's see all these things in action. I will just try to first create a user. Okay, so this user is already there. I can just do hello one. Okay, this is the email, and I will just try to do the login with this hello1@gmail.com. I got the token, so you can see this is the session token. These are the cookies, 2 cookies, and then I will just try to access this request. Give me my own profile. Okay, and here I got 200. Okay, I got my own profile. So this is what we are going to trigger once user is logged in. This from the use session hook, we are making this call to fetch the current user profile. So we will do the logout, and here I will just try to do the login, and you can see we have a simple toaster and I can see the profile page. Okay, so this is like a simple demo I wanted to show, and this is all login and the register. So I also populated a simple register form based on the login. Rest I will share this code. There are lots of troubleshooting we have done. So I hope this is helpful in end-to-end learning how we are using all these libraries and how we are pairing up all these things together to build a simple authentication. This could have been done in less amount of time, but when you are doing from scratch and explaining each and everything, it takes time. I hope this is really helpful. You can just play around with this. I will push the code for it.